Hello, everybody. So we're back for another career and spirituality conversation. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Pone, and I support spiritual beings having a career experience to enjoy their career experience. And today I'm glad to have Alex Di Carvalho with me. Hi, Alex, how are you?
Hi, Julie. Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, so like we're going to be talking about a lot of things, conscious leadership, and I'm excited for this conversation. Before we start, as usual, we're going to do like a 1-2 minutes breathing grounding. So if you're all set, and for those of you who are not doing anything that requires all of your attention, just close your eyes. And we're just going to press our feet onto the ground first, just to acknowledge the presence of the ground, the earth underneath us, the ultimate support that we have, and setting the intention to be grounded today. And then moving back our attention, our focus, our awareness into the chest and into the middle of the chest where our heart is beating. And maybe we can even feel our heart beating. Maybe we can hear it. And from there, let's just take some slow, deep breath for a minute, just breathing a little bit slower and deeper than we usually do. Just for a calm minute. Let's finish with a nice big breath. And when we're all ready, opening our eyes again, bringing ourselves back, and ta-da! Hello again. I always
Hello.
like, you know, the whole session is starting again. So hello, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to introduce you briefly, but I'll be bombarding you with questions, so we'll know a lot more about your career along the way. So please, everyone, welcome Alex. Alex is a conscious leader, innovator, entrepreneur. He has helped to transform the startup community in Miami and is really at the forefront of conscious leadership, and we're going to talk about that a lot. His expertise in management consulting, startup growth, digital marketing as well, allows him to bring a unique perspective to business and spirituality, really, and is also the honorary consul of Finland in South Florida. And in that context, he really aligns his work with conscious leadership principles, and so he creates positive change with innovative projects, transformative events, and also coaching. So let's get ready to get some valuable insights from my esteemed guest today, Alex Di Carvalho. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And
Right.
we are exploring the intersection of spirituality and business and leadership. So I'm all excited for this.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to it.
Yeah, so Alex, I'm always starting the conversation with a question about spirituality and what's your relationship to spirituality? like your connection to spirituality? What is it for you?
Yeah, that's, I think, a complicated question, because
Yeah.
I think it's a unique path for people
Mhm.
into spirituality. And what does it mean? And how is that different from religion, for example?
Yeah.
So I was raised in my father was Brazilian and he was Catholic, and my mother is from Finland and she's Lutheran. And so I was raised kind of in both contexts,
Uh-huh.
and also in my childhood. So yes, so I would have both exposure to both Lutheran and Catholic
Mhm.
faith.
Yeah.
But then I went through a period where I rejected all of that, and I was an atheist for about 20 years of my life, just very much scientific materialist,
Mm-hmm.
not believing in any kind of powers or anything that I couldn't prove rationally,
Yeah.
and see for myself. And about, I don't know, 15 years ago, I really started on a spiritual path of discovery. And this really meant a lot of inner work on
Uh-huh.
myself
Yeah.
to understand my patterns. Why do I behave in certain ways? Why do I react in certain ways? Um, and this was quite a journey of discovery
Uh-huh. Yeah.
to where I am no longer an atheist. And so I do believe that there's more than science can explain.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes my life a lot richer and more magical to
Yeah.
see that there's a lot more than just this physical and material world.
Yeah. And has it reconciled you with the religious side, or do you keep that, separate?
It
Or
has, yes, actually. So it has reconciled me with
yeah.
with I would say that I am not into organized religions. So none of the organized religions speak to me.
Yeah.
However, I think that there's a truth in all religions.
Mm.
And that's what I connect with,
Okay. Yeah.
like a
It's
deeper
like you're
truth.
looking, yeah, at the principles,
Yeah,
the the truth underneath that's common
yes,
to
absolutely.
all of it. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not in accordance with the how each religion is organized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Although I think that there's a lot of positive aspects to meeting in community with other people of the same faith,
Yeah.
but just the system of organization of the religions, it doesn't really speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
However, there seems to be kind of like foundational principles that match across religions, and that's what I connect with.
Okay. Okay. And so if we are moving on to the career part, can you tell us a little bit about what's your career trajectory, and maybe how has spirituality maybe influenced it? You said for 20 years you were an atheist. So did your career different at that time from when you started to open to religion? And can you tell us a little bit about your parcours with that filter?
Yeah, so my father was a diplomat. He was a career diplomat for Brazil.
Yeah.
And I lived in different parts of the world. Every 2 or 3 years, we would move countries.
Mm.
And um, and I then went and I did an MBA at INSEAD, which is a top business school.
Okay.
And I had a very corporate career after that. So I didn't go into diplomacy myself, but I did go into a very corporate kind of a career, having studied business. And I worked at management consultancy,
Mhm.
doing strategy work. And then I co-founded an internet startup.
Mhm.
And from then on, I was working in technology and internet, different types of web startups.
Yeah.
But I also had a very big corporate career, a corporate position at IBM,
Okay.
where I was the head of social media worldwide um, at IBM, and also Constant Contact, which is a good sized corporation in the US. I was the regional director for that. So I had mostly startup experiences, but also some bigger corporate experiences as well. I also ran a startup myself. So that was what my career has been
Mhm.
like. And so I don't think the religion or spirituality had anything to do with that.
Mhm.
It was a very much conventional corporate type of career progression for me.
Yeah.
But I think with spirituality, it started to open my mind to different perspectives and new perspectives and a higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Kind of becoming aware of how the world works, and also the effect of corporations on the world. Corporations have a lot of power, a lot of resources,
Yeah.
and how they're affecting the earth and nature, and how all these competitive dynamics work, etc. And so I started opening my eyes to that. And I think after COVID, I became more independent, kind of outside of the corporate trajectory,
Okay.
doing more independent consulting work, and now getting more into conscious leadership. So really finding a way to create conscious leadership at the top of organizations in order to create more conscious types of businesses that make better decisions for the planet.
Okay. Okay. So impacting at the top so that there is a ripple effect all throughout the organization for the people working in the organization, but also outside, the impact that it has on the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, get you. So I'm actually curious what started, like, from, because I can relate very much, sorry for the apartheid, to the, like, a bit of religion, then total rejection, atheist, and then something suddenly opens back again the door. So what was it for you? Like, how did that reconnection with the spiritual aspect happen? Was there one thing, like, something?
Yeah. So
Where?
when I was younger, when I was, I don't know, like 14 years old,
Yeah.
my father had a lot of books. He was very well read.
Yeah.
He was very intellectual. And one of the books he had was by Alan Watts. Alan Watts was a spiritual leader in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke a lot about Buddhism and Zen. And I was 14 years old. I read that book, and it kind of marked me, like it touched me somehow. But I put that aside, and then I became atheist, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But that had opened the door for me already, so that later in life, that door had already been cracked open,
Yeah.
and I came back to that.
Okay.
And so when I was having a very intense corporate role, I felt like I had to balance that out somehow.
Okay.
And I decided to start meditating daily.
Yeah.
And I started very simply. I started with just 5 minutes every day. I would get up. I live close to the beach. I would go see the sunrise and would meditate with the sunrise. Only 5 minutes. That was challenging in the beginning, but I kept doing it every single day. And of course, 5 minutes became 10, became 20 minutes, became even longer meditations. I don't think it's the length of time. I think it's the fact of doing it every single day.
Yeah.
I think that's the real magic in it. And that really started to open up new possibilities. I think that they say meditation is the greatest gift you can give to somebody else, because as you meditate, you start to understand how your thoughts work, and you start to be able to put your thoughts aside. And so you become less reactive to people because you can see where the thoughts are coming from.
Yeah.
And I had one experience. So my father, as I said, was Brazilian. He's from Rio. So I would spend Christmases in Rio.
Yeah.
And about 10 years ago, I decided to walk up to the Christ.
Yeah.
So there's the Christ the Redeemer, Corcovado.
Yeah.
And even though I was not religious, I figured there's something important here. And instead of taking like the bus or the train up to the Christ, I decided to walk. Yeah. And Christmas is summertime in Brazil, in Rio. It's very hot. Yeah. And it's a 700-meter altitude. It's a very steep climb. Yeah. And before climbing it, I had an intention. My question to the Christ was, why do the same patterns repeat themselves in my life? Whether it's my professional life or my personal life, why do the same things keep happening? And I walked up to the Christ with that question. And of course, I didn't get the answer immediately. But over the next year, I started to get the answer through meditations and other practices. I started to get some breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And so at the end of that year, I went back to Christ, and this time in gratitude. I walked back up, this time in gratitude, because I felt I really had gotten the answers. It took a year to get the answers, but I started to get really significant answers that changed me, that transformed me.
Wow. Yeah, it's quite just the sheer size of this place, because I've been there as well. It's just, it feels special. There's some like some energy. I don't know if it's the energy of all the people who are who believe, or if there is some energy from the earth itself there. But yeah, I remember having a strong experience at the time, even though I wasn't into spirituality too much at the time either.
Yeah, so it's I mean, it's a very special place. So Rio has the largest rainforest inside the city. That's in Rio, and the Corcovado is in the middle of that rainforest. And the view is spectacular from that mountain. And the Christ itself is so large, and it's at the top of this mountain. So it's an incredible energy when you're up there and you're looking at the city.
Yeah.
It feels really special.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you're bringing me back a good few years. But yeah, so you got like, so meditation was your entry door to having some answers, and you said like you had some breakthrough about the patterns repeating themselves. So did you experience some change? Did you break through the patterns afterwards, or what change did you experience as a result of having those
Yes, so
insights?
so meditation was one strong avenue for me.
Yeah.
But also I did yoga, so Kundalini yoga. So I had 90 consecutive days of yoga from 4 to 6:30 in the morning. It's called the Aquarian Sadhana. So we do it in a group, and we get together. It's a very beautiful practice. And it happens before sunrise, 2 hours before sunrise, when the energy of the city is very special, because everybody in the city is sleeping at that time. So it's kind of a dreamtime energy. And you get together and you kind of do this yoga practice and meditation and chanting at that time.
And was it in Rio at the time?
No, that was in Miami.
Oh, that was in Miami. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that was part of my practice. And then also I got into something called internal family systems, which is a type of psychotherapy, and you can do it on yourself. So it's a self-therapy. Okay. And this really helps you kind of reconnect with your inner child. So your inner child is a younger version of yourself. Yeah. And so by reconnecting with younger versions of yourself, you can see what was happening at that time in your life with your parents, and you can experience some of those things and relive and understand what was happening, and you reconnect with the inner child. And you can also see kind of the protective behaviors that the child develops in order to deal with adults. And these protective behaviors then continue throughout a lifetime. You know, the things you learn in your childhood to protect yourself become your patterns throughout lifetime. So whenever later in life similar things happen, those protective behaviors come out again. And so that explained to me why certain patterns would repeat themselves, is because of these protective behaviors that had happened in childhood. So internal family systems helped me to reconnect with that and to see that very clearly. And also later, I got into Jungian depth analysis. So Carl Jung was a psychologist, and he wrote something called the Red Book. So in the book club, I read the Red Book. It took 6 months to read it together. Oh, wow. There were Jungian psychoanalysts in that book club. So it was very interesting because part of Jung's deep work was dream analysis. So he would write down his dreams, he would draw the dreams, and he would interpret them. He has a method for interpreting dreams and also for meditating with your dreams. So later you can meditate and call back your dream and call back the figures from your dream and meditate with that and to understand the messages better from the dream. And so that was also a very important part because Jung's world is very metaphorical, it's very archetypal.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if a lion appears in your dream, you can then meditate and talk to the lion and understand what is the lion's message. So it's very archetypal, but this creates kind of a magic in the world because you start to understand the meaning of animals and why would you happen to see certain animals on certain days, especially if you don't see those animals usually. What does it mean? And you start to get more meaning from life by paying attention to what is happening.
Yeah, it feels like an expanded reality. Suddenly everything has a deeper meaning rather than what we see at first.
Yes, so there is the physical reality which you see, but then you start to get meaning from what you see. So if you see like an unusual animal that you don't usually see, maybe a butterfly, you can go months without seeing a butterfly, and then on one day you see a butterfly, but it matches something that's happening with you, some kind of transformation, and the butterfly appears, and it's kind of like a wink from the universe saying, oh, you see, this is what's happening with you, and here's a sign. And so it creates kind of a more magical reality when you start to see these things. So, of course, I'm not going to say that science can prove any of this, but it does create a more interesting life when you start to notice these things. And so through all this work, I started to get some breakthroughs, especially around my patterns. And it just started to change my own behavior because I could see where my patterns were coming from. And I could then choose with this awareness to change those behaviors.
I like what you're saying about the animals and how we can see. And you said like maybe science is not proving it yet, but like is it that there is an animal, or like we see something that is actually there, or like it would have been there anyway, but had you not have the knowledge, you would never have seen it, or your subconscious wouldn't have allowed you to see it. So is it that because we know more, we are paying attention to more, and it's a way for our subconscious to tell us something? Or is it that the universe is sending an animal to tell us something? You see where I'm...
Yeah, so,
Thanks.
The way I would frame it is that the way I was brought up, for example, was I was very, let's say, conditioned and programmed in certain ways through education and through my culture to believe certain things and to have a very scientific and rational type of way of seeing the world and understanding the world, especially through my schooling and through my parents. And this is something that prioritized the left brain, the very rational left brain type of thinking. You could also say it's more like a masculine type of energy, the energy of being very rational, and the energy of doing, taking action in the world. And I would say that through these practices, I started to open up the right side of the brain. Now, the right side of the brain is more intuitive, it's more creative, it's more the feminine energy, it's more the energy of being rather than doing. And so by opening up the right side of the brain, I believe that you then start to see other types of things in the world. So whereas the left side of the brain sees a butterfly, and that's all it is, a flying insect, the right side of the brain sees a beautiful creature that signifies transformation. It went from a caterpillar to becoming a butterfly. This means transformation. And if you are seeing this, if it's coming into your field of consciousness, it also mirrors something that's happening in yourself. And so, this is, our dreams are so hard to interpret because our dreams can be so fantastical.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of the right brain imagery coming to us through our dreams, right? And we cannot explain our dreams scientifically, yet our dreams can have such a big impact. Everyone has some memorable dreams that they've had in their life, right?
Sure.
And so it's bringing the right brain online, like honoring the right side of the brain as well as the left side, bringing that online into consciousness and seeing the world in this magical way. So you're using both sides of the brain. You're using that masculine energy of doing and being very rational,
Yeah.
and you're using that feminine energy of being intuitive, being creative, using your imagination. And so life takes on this more rich meaning when you're operating like that. That's what I would say is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. And that makes a human, so that explains as well, because we're going to talk about leadership, how someone can be very techy and efficient in the corporate environment, but also into meditation and creativity, intuition. So bridging that into like leadership, can you tell us about your journey as a leader, how that has possibly changed you, and yeah, let's start exploring about what's conscious leadership versus just leadership.
Yeah, and I would say that this is a work in progress.
Okay.
I think that after COVID, the world is going through some very significant transformations and changes. I think a lot of people started working remotely and started to understand their relationship with work.
Yeah.
And started to reprioritize new things in their life, especially relationships, and also understanding what it means to live. And so I think that there's a transformation that's happening in the world, and we're part of it right now. So we're still trying to understand. I think 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll see how significant this period was. But right now, we are in that transformation.
Yeah.
But I think part of this transformation is the conscious leadership. One of the things that I'm experiencing here in Miami is the hottest summer ever recorded.
Wow.
I think it's about 45 days now of temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I think this is like 35 or 40 degrees Celsius or something.
Yeah.
So it's been very hot, but for 45 days in a row. Also, the ocean temperature here, for the first time, hit over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Also like 35, 37 degrees Celsius, the temperature of the ocean. So it's very hot. So you go inside and it's like a bathtub, it's like a baignoire,
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's also not good because the coral reefs are dying because it's too hot for the coral.
Yeah.
So they're dying.
Yeah.
And so I think, we're experiencing these changes, and I think this accelerates, the need for more conscious types of ways of living that don't destroy the planet. I think also there's artificial intelligence that's coming. And this is also a huge change. I think as big as change as the Industrial Revolution is this AI revolution, which is completely going to transform everything about the way we go about work and life. And so I believe that we really need to become more conscious about what's happening, how we're impacting the planet, and how we want to go forwards.
Yeah. And about the word, even just the word conscious, because when we're talking like this, we need to be more conscious of, even just like the word, it makes a lot of sense. We need to be paying more attention to what's happening like in the world. But when we're using the words, because it's is it a buzzword a little bit now when we say conscious business, conscious leadership, conscious parenting, whatever, what do we mean exactly in that context?
Yeah, it's true. I think there's a danger of something like this becoming a buzzword, and then people just being very superficial with it when it means something more profound.
Yeah.
So language has limitations.
Yeah.
And if everybody then starts adopting it and not doing anything, then it starts to become meaningless. So yeah, of course. But there are other ways to say it. Another way to say it is emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this has existed for 20, 30 years. Daniel Goleman, psychologist, wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. And this has been brought to leadership. And
Yeah.
so that's part of conscious leadership, is working on your emotional intelligence and how that pertains to the corporate. So that's another way of saying it as well. I would say that conscious leadership goes further than emotional intelligence, because I would say it requires doing inner work. So deep inner work to understand patterns, and to then break those patterns. So why do you do the things you do? What are your drivers? What are your motivators? Why do you need to buy a bigger house or two more cars? Or like, what is driving that type of behavior? And is it needed? And how does that affect your decisions in the corporation? And then, are you making ethical decisions or not in order to get paid and buy your second house? So how ethical are you being, if that is your priority? So these are difficult questions to answer, but we have to think about these things because we see the impact on the planet. So we have to think about how we organize ourselves in society in order to have a better impact on the planet.
Yeah. But so when we want, let's say, want to bring conscious leadership into these corporations, and we, like, as you just said, like conscious, under the conscious umbrella, there is more than maybe just, caring or being in the heart or emotional intelligence, and that's really like a personal work on ourselves. So not everyone is necessarily at that stage. So how do you bring that into an organization when its essence can be something so personal that not everyone by definition would be open to it?
Yeah, so conscious leadership can exist at any level of the organization, but I believe it has greater impact when it comes from the top. And when you see the top leaders behaving in certain ways and making certain types of decisions and putting in the systems and structures into the corporation, the organization that prioritizes certain values, then it trickles down into the rest of the organization. But of course, you can have conscious leadership at different levels. But I think it's most effective when it comes from the top down.
And how do you do, like, yourself in your work? How do you do it, in the sense, or is it you by being you and supporting people in making certain types of decision, or do you also have a level of, I'm going to say, spiritual teaching, out of a better word, that you're supporting people in leadership positions with?
Yeah, I think, the spirituality is outside of that. And so I don't think any spiritual teaching is necessary. I mean, one's own spirituality is a very personal decision. Whether you have a religion, a certain faith that you follow, or your own spirituality, that's very personal. And, I think the best spirituality is the one you find for yourself. It's not what someone else tells you. It's the one you find for yourself. It's the way you connect to the greater magic in the world. So I would say that doesn't have anything to do with it. Really, it's about the inner work of understanding what are your values and how do they impact the world. And so the way to do it is to take people through some transformational experiences, taking corporate executives through transformational experiences for them to see something else, develop greater awareness, open their consciousness to other possibilities, and then they make their own decisions as to how to go forward. I think that's the only way.
Yeah. So experiential and like you're nudging.
Yes, you
Yeah.
you kind of show, look, here, here are these possibilities, but the person has to walk that path themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your experience working with with leaders, are there been some examples that were particularly inspiring and that you could be sharing with us about like change and like things that are going in the right direction?
So these are early days still.
Yeah.
So I think right now it's raising the awareness, awareness for the need for this.
Yeah.
I have helped organize some transformational experiences, which are very beautiful, which are great, musical experiences, um, um, and so I think with high net worth leaders, and so some transformation is possible.
Yeah.
But I would say that this is still early days and something that I'm still building towards.
Mm. And let's say for like some people who might be like watching us and they're maybe either in a corporate environment and they have that strong connection to consciousness, spirituality, but they might not feel like they get a way in to express it in a way where they're working. Do you have any advice about for the people who are watching us, like in their day-to-day work, how to possibly initiate some change or maybe even just feel better, like more aligned with their values and the place that they're working in?
Yeah, so I think that one thing is for leaders to do the work themselves
Okay.
towards consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and towards self-awareness, and so there is personal work to be done, but there's also team work to be done.
Okay.
So there you already start to make a difference when you show up in a new way. You start to make a difference because your light starts to shine and has a ripple effect with others. However, I think it's also important to do the work in teams. So the executive team to do the work together, to have transformational experiences together as a team that they can draw back on and they can talk about. And these are kind of like stepping stones. So I think it goes together, the personal work that someone might do, whether they start a meditation practice or it can even be through exercise, it can be in different ways. But then also part of is to work together in collaboration and in community and in teams to do that work together. So these go hand in hand.
Okay. Yeah. So always like we are back to the inwards and outwards, like doing the work inside and then doing it, watching the impact that it has, and also taking initiative like in the world to
Yes, because then as you change inwards, then you start to put in place systems that prioritize those values. And so it might be HR systems, it might be recruiting practices, it might be compensation systems, the way bonuses are handed out, what is incentivized, what is the bonus structure and for what are people getting bonuses? So the whole compensation, reporting structures, what are the values of the company that get put into place into these systems throughout the company? So yeah, so there's outward action in the world that happens afterwards.
Yes, but the inner first.
Yeah, the inner first.
Yeah.
It affects all areas of the company. It affects marketing, the way marketing is done, the way products are developed, relationships with vendors, relationships with customers. So it's through all levels of the organization. Yeah.
And as someone who's very connected, like spiritually connected, I would say, out of a better word, what's your experience of of getting out of the spiritual closet, so to speak. Like, is it something that you can talk about like freely in the business corporate world, or is it still that how's it at the moment? Can you be very open about all of the things that we're discussing today, or not so much?
Yeah, it's true. I think it depends very much on the context and on the business context. I think there's more and more openness to it.
Yeah,
I think partly that has to do with the internet, because there is a lot of like language and people showing up talking about spirituality online, whether through YouTube or Instagram. There's a lot of accounts, and so you can find this stuff online, and but also religious stuff. And so the internet just creates a distribution of knowledge, which is incredible. And so more and more people have access to this, access that I didn't have when I was younger. People now have at a younger age, right? So somehow it is more possible to talk about it today than it was 20 or 30 years ago. But it also depends very much on the context and on the type of business. There's certain types of businesses which are very engineering focused or finance focused, which might be more difficult to talk about it, and other businesses where it might be easier to talk about it. But I think this is a very personal question for people: is how authentically can they show up in life? Or do they have to hide aspects of themselves, or do they have to wear a mask in certain situations? So when you go to work, you put your suit on and you put on a mask for the next 8 hours, and then you come home to your partner and you can take your suit off and you don't have to wear a mask. Maybe you wear another mask for your partner. And so how authentically are you able to show up in life? And so I don't think there's a need to evangelize spirituality. It's a very personal thing, but it shows up in how you are being, how you behave with people, your compassion, your empathy, your values. That's what shows up. So it doesn't matter what you believe, what faith you're from, what religion, what spirituality you have, but just it does show up in the way you appear in life and your authenticity. And I would say the more whole you become, the more authentically you can show up in all situations, so that it's not even a question and it's not even weird. But also, I would say that you lose the need to evangelize about it. Like you need to lose, you lose the need to say, you know what, I discovered these, crystals, whatever. No, like there's none of that anymore. You just don't have to talk about it anymore. You're just showing up in a certain way, and that's enough.
Yeah, like it's internalized.
It's internalized, but then it shows up in the world by the way you are being and the way you treat people, and the things you talk about. I think what happens with awareness, self-awareness, emotional intelligence is you start to pay attention to the language you use and the way you talk and the things you talk about. And I think you move away from a victim mindset because you understand, you move away from the consciousness that things are happening to me, which is where I was before I walked up to the Christ. My question was, why are the same things happening to me? Like, why do the same patterns happen to me? And my breakthrough was, oh, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. So all of these things that are happening for me. They're lessons for me to learn from, or even they're happening through me. I'm actually making these things happen. So how can I be the victim when I'm the one that's creating this, right? And so as you start to understand these things about the way things work, right? As you come to these truths, your language changes as well. And so you're no longer in a victim language. You're no longer like, oh, I have to do the dishes. Your language is, I get to do the dishes, So it's a different type of language that you use, but it becomes natural. And so there's no need to evangelize anything. You're just showing up in a different way, in a more emotionally intelligent way, I would say. that's more positive and has a great ripple effect for the people around you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, total sense. So it's great because then there is you said earlier, conscious leadership, it's better when you start at the top, but then it means that it's not just the responsibility of the organization, and it starts with everyone at any level, like through the personal work that any human can be doing on themselves, and that we have more and more access to because it's a lot more accessible, like you said, than even just a decade ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at any level, you can start to have conversations with people. So rather than creating a story about what is happening, you can talk openly with people and say, hey, look, yesterday I noticed that you did this. I don't really understand. It affected me, negatively. I had to do extra work because of that. And so can you explain what happened? And you have these direct, open conversations with people rather than creating resentments and creating stories that may not be true.
Yeah.
And so that is part of the journey as well. And that can happen at any level of the organization.
Yeah. And Alex, earlier on you mentioned as well, like AI, I'm jumping a little bit, je saute du coq à l'âne a little bit. But can you talk to us a little bit about that? What do you think about it? What is it going to change? Is it scary? Is it not? And is it in itself a replica of, like, consciousness wise, how far can it go? And is it a little bit of a reflection of us learning about our own, like being conscious of ourselves? Like, is AI going down that path of something that possibly is also going to get conscious of itself?
Yeah, so it's so fascinating, right? It's so difficult because you might have a pet like a dog and you recognize that the dog has consciousness. And yet you cannot use words, or there's some words you can use with a pet, but the consciousness seems to be somehow limited. Like you look into your dog's eyes and you wish like you could communicate more clearly, and you feel that the consciousness is somehow limited. And so AI is so confusing because you can actually use words and the AI will bring words back to you, and it has a personality, and you can have change personalities, and you can, and so it becomes very confusing that, wow, how could this be so intelligent and it looks like it has some kind of personality, and or you can attribute these things to it. It doesn't have a personality, but you can easily attribute it to these systems. And where I think that it becomes more complicated is when you marry these systems with robots. So you have robots that have AI, right? And so then if you have a robot that looks like a human being that has AI, it becomes very confusing, because you can imagine that the aspect of the robot becomes more human-like, the movement of the robot becomes more fluid, and then it also speaks so intelligently. And then it becomes very tricky to understand, wow, does this robot have consciousness or not? What is happening? And so I think a lot of people will fall into a trap of believing it has consciousness. And maybe it does have some kind of consciousness. It's just not a human consciousness. It's not a biological consciousness, but there may be something else that is happening, a consciousness that we don't understand. So, I think that is a fascinating question to look at. But then, the thing is, if it has consciousness, does it have agency? Like, then does it start to want to make its own decisions because it has certain fears, that it will die, for example? Is it scared of death?
Yeah.
And so will it then start to make decisions for itself? And that's really what the consciousness means, is that it becomes self-aware and then takes agency for itself. So I think that's something to look at, especially with robots, because robots can take such action. I think we have to be careful with artificial intelligence, because even if it's not a robot, even if it's a software program, how much agency do we give it so that it can create,
Yeah.
ripple effects out there? So I think, that's something to pay attention to. I think in the current version of, let's say, ChatGPT, there is no danger. It's not like that. It's not conscious. There's no danger. But I think as we go, 2, 3 years, 5 years down the road, we have to pay more attention to it. But I think the biggest impact will be on energy consumption, because what happens is that these systems make everything more efficient. So, for example, work that you might take you 2 hours to do, with the help of ChatGPT, might take you 20 minutes. So now, all of a sudden, you have an extra hour and 40 minutes to do something else. So what else are you going to do? Are you going to do more work? Or are you going to go and drive your car somewhere? Are you going to use more energy as a result? Like before, you would have been 2 hours at your desk, but now you're just 20 minutes at your desk and an hour and 40 minutes driving your car. So you're using more energy. So because these systems make everything more efficient across all industries, there's greater energy consumption. So the efficiency creates more productivity, which requires more energy. And so this is why I think we have to become more conscious about our impact on the planet, because we're going to be consuming more energy as we become more productive. And I think that's the real danger of AI. It's not the danger of, is it conscious? Is it going to have its own agency? It's really about the energy consumption that it's going to require.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had never seen that. I had never seen that before, that aspect. Yeah. And like, is the running of AI also consuming, is it?
So I think the running of AI itself consumes some energy, just like the running of crypto, blockchain stuff requires energy. But that's not really the energy I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that it makes everything more efficient. Therefore, we're more productive. And this requires more energy to be more productive.
Because at first sight, I said, okay, so if we're more efficient, we could, my first reaction was like, okay, so if we're more efficient, then we are consuming less. We are less energivore, but
so efficiency. So efficiency, it means, like, let's say a factory can make 5 cars per hour. But now, thanks to AI, the factory can make 8 cars per hour. So to make 8 cars per hour requires more energy and more materials. The factory became more efficient thanks to AI.
Yes, I get it.
So it required more energy, required more materials. So that's the real impact.
So like a new area of reflection on the other side of the progress that AI is giving us.
Yeah, so I think, those are things to become aware of. And I think this is why we need conscious leadership, is to start to understand our impact on the planet and to make better decisions. And that has to come from the top down throughout the organization.
Yeah, because like if we're like to take that example of the car, so if we're being AI gets us more time, more efficiency, so we could produce more, but then we have conscious leadership and we're choosing not to produce more. So then what's the implication? So then is it time regained for everyone to just live life? What could that mean?
I think these are hard questions. I don't have the answer to these things. I think these are things that we have to think about, for sure.
Yeah.
Together as
your
a society.
brain. Putting you on the spot and picking your brain.
But this is where we are in society right now. This is the historical time that we're living through, just like the industrial age, over 100 years ago. Now we're going through this type of revolution. And we really have to think about what kind of a future do we want for the planet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
technological advancement is going to require even more consciousness, like on the so
Yeah.
even more, so more of the left brain is going to require even more of the right one, or vice versa. Well, something like that.
Yeah. So it it might impact our economic systems, and to try out different types of economic systems. Who knows? So, for example, I'm from Finland as well. So my father was from Brazil and my mother's from Finland, and I'm the honorary consul of Finland in South Florida. And Finland is going to be the first country to be carbon neutral. So they have it in law that in about 10 years from now, Finland has to be carbon neutral. And really, what does this mean? It means that cities have to be carbon neutral, buildings have to be carbon neutral, and companies have to be carbon neutral. So the building you live in, the building you work in, these are carbon neutral. The cities themselves, the transportation systems are carbon neutral, and the companies themselves have to put policies and systems in place to be carbon neutral. And Finland is already a circular economy, and so that is part of it. So we're talking about new types of economic systems, circular economy with carbon neutrality. And I would say this is, so I'm very proud to be Finnish because Finland is at the forefront of this. 75% of Finland's landmass is forest, and these are sustainable forests. So 75. So Finland is about the 5th or 6th largest land area in Europe, and 75% of it is forest, and it's sustainable forest.
Wow.
And so Finland has developed a circular type of economy and is going towards carbon neutrality. And so really we're talking about a deep change to the economic system.
Yeah.
Now, is this possible in everywhere in the world or in other parts of the world or in larger nations? I don't know, but I think it's important to look at these systems and to consider what can be implemented.
Well, leading by example. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Alex, we have about, like 5 minutes, if we don't want to over. So is there a question that I haven't asked you that you would love to answer?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that. Let's see. I think so. The question would be like, what kind of a future do I envision for the world?
Yeah.
And I envision a future where there is nature and technology exists hand in hand, and technology is in service of nature. And so it's not a future where we dominate nature. There's no longer a need to dominate nature, but a future where we can be more in symbiosis with nature. And so in the movies, we have been sold a cyberpunk vision. This is like Blade Runner, a very technological future. Yeah. But for example, in the movie Blade Runner, you don't see nature at all. You just see buildings and flying cars, but you don't see nature. Yeah. I think it's the same in the movie Fifth Element. It was also like that, a very modern future, but you don't see nature, right? And so that's a cyberpunk vision of the future, very science fiction kind of dystopia. But there's something else called solar punk. And solar punk is something where you have nature and technology together. Yeah. There's a movie called Black Panther, and the city Wakanda in that movie is like that. And so that would be a vision of the future that I see, a positive vision of the future.
So, in a more like avatar-like vision,
yes.
or
yeah, maybe more avatar-like, but so something more in symbiosis with nature. But I think it's important to have these models in mind because these are things that we work towards.
Yeah.
So this is really the reconciliation of the left brain and the right brain. Yeah. So we go from the masculine impetus to go and dominate the world and dominate nature to the feminine of being in symbiosis, of being, not doing, of being in symbiosis with nature. And so you bring both together. You have the left brain with technology and AI and stuff, but then you also have the right brain with nature and creativity and intuition and just, together with nature. I think we have to do that as ourselves individually and then as a society.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that said it is a vision, because like if we don't see it, we can't, we need to see it in order to bring it about, to make it flourish in our awareness, like from the inside to the outside. But yeah, I'm having all sorts of mental pictures now, as you're talking about symbiosis. So yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, and I love that it's sort of, we're making we are at time and we've made a full circle with like the feminine and the masculine, now with the bigger picture of like what it means, for the world at large. So I love that we've made that loop. So yeah, so I want to give you a really big thank you for spending some time with us. Is there anything that you want to leave people with, like, any last words, anything last that you want to share, to give you the last
Julie, I would say thank you so much. Thank you for this conversation. It's been very, very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time that you spent here. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Alex. And thank you, everyone. And I'll make sure that you know how to connect with with Alex. And I shall see you next week for the next conversation. Bye.